Adam, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Yes. Now, when did I first hear about you? I think it was while I was on the campaign trail for Vivek Ramaswamy. You know him.
Hmm.
I saw you were on his, at that time, podcast that was associated with his presidential campaign. But I heard your story for the very first time, got your book, very compelling.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful that we get the opportunity to actually meet virtually and speak.
Yeah, likewise. I was following your candidacy as well for the Senate. So yeah, so it's good that
Yeah.
we cross paths.
Listen, and both of us are doing this podcast virtually. We're both on a computer. So I was a little bit afraid. I didn't know if, according to New York Governor Kathy Hochul, I wasn't sure if you knew how to use a computer. You are Black.
That's
So
right.
I'm glad to see that you figured out how to use a computer. Not only do you have heard of the word computer, but you actually know how to use it, and you're on. So look at that. Black people can learn. But, I'm being facetious, obviously. But that mentality, it is not something that is being said and done in a vacuum somewhere. We
Right.
actually see that those words, these people's words, that they mean something and
Right.
that they're actually showing up in policies and how the government, with their long and powerful hand, show up in people's lives, specifically those where they believe they are superior, they are gods, and we are just, waiting to be controlled,
Mm.
waiting for their benevolence. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, condescending Democrats is in vogue. So there's a lot of it, and so people understand. I used to be a Democrat some years ago. I officially was done supporting them actually during Joe Biden's campaign. Um, I had a foot out the door at the time, and I was open to other things, but I was completely done after watching everything that happened with his candidacy.
So
Um,
you were done with him during the 2020 campaign or after?
during.
So what was it about Biden that was like the final nail in the coffin for you being a Democrat?
So it was a combination of Biden and what the party was doing. I had been following the primaries very closely at the time, and I saw how they were artificially propping up Joe Biden. I remember there was a period where uh, early on in the primary process, Joe Biden was terrible. He didn't know where he was. He was belligerent. He was arguing with constituents who asked him legit questions. Almost got into a fight, you know,
Yes.
where it was just like, and this is the guy, and everybody, and I just kept seeing like all these different narratives from left wing outlets where they're just like, but Joe has to be the guy, and I was like,
Yeah.
why does Joe have to be the guy? It just felt like that the entire way through, and I was pretty open as far as who the candidate would be at the time. And then I saw when he went to, I want to say it was North Carolina, that he went to North Carolina and he quote unquote won that debate. And then he won the primary, right? And the whole thing surrounding that debate was that North Carolina has a large black population. So all of a sudden, they just started talking about reparations and talking about slavery, and I was just like, "What?" And then I think the next primary was like in New Hampshire or something like
Wow.
that. You never heard them mention that ever again. But
Yeah.
that's par for the course. But the thing that drove me away was after that primary, Joe Biden had finally won that primary, and then after that primary, everyone started dropping out. And it made no sense to me whatsoever because it's not like Joe Biden had some sort of momentum. Matter of fact, there were probably other people who had momentum who were winning the previous primaries. But it was like a behind the scenes deal where
Right.
everybody agreed to drop out. And matter of fact, certain numbers of people stayed in long enough so that Bernie Sanders didn't get enough delegates. Like it
Hmm.
became very clear that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
They stayed in long enough so that Bernie Sanders couldn't get the delegates, and then at the right time, the rest of them dropped out. But
Now
it
you
just
know
seemed
that
strange. Yeah.
now you know that does happen on the Republican side as well. You know, like the strategizing, the haggling. Again, I was the National Grassroots Director for Vivek Ramaswamy. Now Vivek did not, wasn't a part of the haggling, but I remember those conversations being had that if you don't drop out, then, who are you taking votes from? It was those constant conversations. If
Right.
this person stays in, well, they're taking votes from this person, but not that person. So do we want this person to stay in, or do we not want this person to stay in? Right. So, I
Right.
mean, so that kind of haggling goes on both sides of the aisle, but that was the moment for you in in the
That
Democrat Party.
that was like the climax of it.
Mhm.
The you ain't black stuff, all this other stuff that came later on just kind of cemented my choice. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was a number of things that were happening. And for me, so people understand, like for me, I'm very analytical, and you do the best that you can with the information that you had. My biggest flaw was that my information sources were limited.
Mm.
So my source of information came from, well, supposedly the trusted media.
Yeah.
And so this is the information that they're providing me, and that's what I'm analyzing. Um, and and it was around that time that I started seeking other information and started, taking in different books and stuff like that, and things were clashing as far as how I was seeing things and what was being portrayed, and just kind of going from there. And I'm trying to remember, because I can't exactly remember the timeline. I think it was after I said I was done, that I saw the Donald Trump lie of good people on both sides, when I
Yeah.
saw the full context video.
It was so clear.
Yeah. and
But
and
I
for
mean, I
yeah
mean, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, for me, I never saw the full context video.
Mm.
Like I saw the millionth time that they showed the clip where he
Yeah.
said there's good people on both sides. I saw the million references to that
Hmm.
brief clip, but I never saw like the 10, 15 seconds prior where he says, I'm not talking about the white supremacists. And that's
Yeah.
kind of important to the context of the
It is
smear.
very important. And I think it's
Yeah.
very alarming when you walk behind the curtains and you see that we have people in our country who are intentionally sowing seeds of untruth, of misinformation, of disinformation. They are intentionally manipulating people. And it
Mhm.
just seems so anathema. Like I would never intentionally try to manipulate people, especially when you see the direction the country is headed. And
Right.
yet, it's quite alarming as you begin to walk more and more behind the curtains of the political systems on both sides in our country. And you begin to recognize that for a lot of people, it is not about love of country, it is about what is in it for me right now.
Right. It's about what is it, and for me, it's about power. Um, it's about favors. It's
Yeah,
about everything else than what we idealistically hold up as
yeah,
to help other people, help our country. Um, and while my awakening was about the political left and Democrats, my learning that lesson made me an independent. It didn't make me a Republican. I became more open to voting Republican. Just
right.
I'm open to voting Republican today, but I'm not a registered Republican. Um, and actually, as time has gone on, and the more, like you said, you go behind the curtain, you start talking to people, you start realizing certain things. Man, there's crap on both sides.
We
There's
are
a
we are certainly in trouble in this country.
yeah.
But before we move on, I want to double click on something you said about the source of your information, because I have
Mhm.
said that time and time again. I was the one who took Vivek into the South Side of Chicago, something Republicans don't do at all, but it was amazing, right? Because you and I know Black people are not little unicorns, right? We
Right.
want the same thing that everyone else want, right? And but taking Vivek into the South Side of Chicago, standing room only. I made sure we didn't bus people into that event. It was the people who primarily live on the South Side and who want something better for their community. So we bring
Hmm.
them in, and so it wasn't just that, but even when I was on in my 2022 campaign, I was specifically, although I was in a Republican primary, I still went into predominantly Black communities and spoke primarily to Black men, and I could see Black men specifically was ready for something different than
Hmm.
the Democrat Party. But then now listening to a number of Black people as they're waking up from their slumber with the Democrat Party, and they're watching Democrats dump illegals into their already unstable community, giving them all kinds of resources. So, and I began to vocalize, and I believe that it's true, that I believe Black people are open to voting anything other than Republican. And specifically, I think they're open to voting for Republicans, but I don't
Hmm.
know if they're ready. I believe they're open to the idea, but I don't know if they're ready to walk into that voting booth and to pull that lever for a Republican. And the reason why I say I don't believe they're ready is because, to your point, if your only diet is CNN and MSNBC and Don Lemon, and all you hear is that Republicans are racist, Republicans hate you, Republicans are, trying to accost you, trying to hurt you, trying to harm you, it makes them, if that's your only source of information, I understand why Black people may be open to the idea of voting something other than Democrat, but not necessarily ready to run in there and vote Republican. What do you think we in the Republican Party? I think I know what they need to do, but I'm curious to hear what it is you believe that we need to do. And do you even agree with me?
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with what you're saying. I think there are more people who are, I would say, dissatisfied with the political landscape. I think a lot of people who don't necessarily want a rematch between two of some of the oldest people to run for office. Um, you know, I think that there's great voter apathy that's happening, um, and I don't know if either party is aware of what is happening, like at its core, that there are a lot of people who just rather sit on the sidelines because they're like, what's the point? What's the difference between the two?
Bravo. Adam, I agree with you. I agree with
Yeah.
you. And I know that you're in New Jersey. I believe you're in New
Yeah.
Jersey, or at least you said that in your interview with Vivek on Truth. But you're in New Jersey. You saw, I'm sure, this past weekend, Donald Trump, 80,000, 100,000 people in Wildwood. And the conservatives went wild across social media, like, oh, we're going to win, we're going to win, we're going to win. But I remember those same level of rallies in 2020.
Right.
And we all know what happened in 2020. Now, yes, there was a lot of, I believe there was a lot of theft that went on during that election. I believe there was a lot of nefarious activities that went on, a lot of intimidation from the left in that particular race. But nonetheless, we saw what the outcome was. And although I see this rally, you just saw this rally, and yet I feel a lot of what you just said. I don't believe either side is really paying attention to the grassroots
Right.
and putting and I don't think they fully understand or appreciate the apathy that is even among our voters, or my voters, since I'm a Republican, that there is a tremendous amount of apathy and hopelessness and despair among the base.
Yeah. Absolutely. I made this analogy some time ago. You know, if Garth Brooks was to come into New Jersey and sell out an arena, it doesn't mean that Garth Brooks is the most popular musician that exists in the world. It means that he was able to gather enough people to show up at one location and he put on a concert. So it shows some level of enthusiasm, but it doesn't mean that he's going to win something, or he's going to reach the number one on the Billboard charts with his next single. It just means that there are fans. And I think that there are a lot of people who are on the political right who get highly infatuated with rallies now that Trump
Yeah.
is on the scene. Since Trump came on the scene, everybody holds the rallies as if they're a true indicator of an outcome. And I'm telling you, there are so many people who saw all these rallies that were happening in the midst of the pandemic and trying to open, and Trump is campaigning, and they're seeing all these rallies and like it's going to happen again. There's so why? Oh, because you see how many people showed up. It's like that doesn't mean anything. Like for example, why would New Jersey? If people understood New Jersey is wedged between two major states, Pennsylvania and New York.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't take long to drive from New York to Wildwood. It doesn't take long to drive from Philadelphia and eastern Pennsylvania to come down to
Right.
Wildwood. So that doesn't mean that New Jersey's going to win. Who knows how many people came from other states or even Delaware, to come from other states to go into Wildwood, New Jersey to see Trump speak. They like him, so they're going to travel. Just like you like your favorite band, you're going to go and travel and see them if they're a couple hours away. So I think, much like you said, there is this loss of realizing that there is more to it than just putting on a show for a couple of hours. This means that you need people to knock on doors. This means that you need to put out mailers. You need to do calls. You need to do all the grunt work of a typical campaign, and that stuff sucks, but that's necessary. That you have to do these things. So I think there's too much of this being in love with the show. You know, the same thing goes with Mar-a-Lago. I've equated Mar-a-Lago as the political Playboy mansion. If you think about it, when I remember back in the day when Hugh Hefner was
Wait a
alive,
minute
it's like,
now, Adam. You skating on thin ice. They love doing their photo ops with their bikinis and all their plastic parks and down there. But everybody's so happy. Like, why shouldn't we? I mean, why can't you and I just let them be happy? They got a rally. It is impressive. I mean, Biden certainly couldn't get 80,000 or 80 people for that matter
right.
in one room. I mean, so doesn't that mean something that he got 80,000 to 100,000 people to come out in a rally? I mean, everybody looked really happy. There was a lot of red coloring, a lot of American flags. I mean, doesn't that mean something?
Partially. It means just like polls mean something, but it definitely don't mean everything. It can indicate that there might be a trend, or I don't know. I just don't think it's everything. And I think so many people put so much stake into these rallies that, it is a show at the end of the day. He's not really going there and telling you something new. And I would even venture to say it doesn't even feel like a campaign rally. It feels like a show much of the time. I saw him speak one time, actually at the Moms for Liberty conference. I sat right in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Was it some months ago? Was it last year?
Yeah, Philadelphia, 2023.
Yep, in Philadelphia. And much of it was him kind of going off the cuff and complaining about, these lawsuits and stuff like that and being persecuted. I mean, and he had announced that he was running. So I'm just like, he didn't, there was no new position. I understand politics from years ago. I've been following politics for quite some time. Everyone, when you announce that you run for office, you announce like, here are my policy positions. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I'm going to better your life. And there was very minimal amounts of that. And matter of fact, the things that he did talk about were much of the same things that he talked about, for 2016 when he won. So I'm like, all right, so what are your new positions? Because things are different than 2016. Inflation's wild. What are you going to do? There's a war in Ukraine. What are you going to do? And
well,
for
I think he will actually. Yeah. Okay, so let me just be real clear because, I mean, these MAGA people, let me tell you, let me be real clear. I am America first, right? And I did not become America first in 2016. I have always been. I have a long history of doing my part to make America great every single day and America first. And however, I do believe Donald Trump is far superior than Joe Biden. And I think
Absolutely.
most of us know Joe Biden is not running anything, right? Except running to go get another ice cream cone. But he's certainly not running the country. Other people are doing that. And that keeps me up at
Yeah.
night. So one, I am supporting Donald Trump. I will do all that I can to make sure in my sphere of influence that I am pushing people towards making that decision as well. I am doing my part in that.
Hmm.
And yet, I am just over the thought that I have to pick up pom poms and go rah rah all the way from now through November. Too much is on the line. I believe, and I've said it numerous times, that if we should lose in the Republican Party, no one from the Independent Party is going to win. No one
Right.
from the Libertarian Party is going to win. Hence the reason why I find myself stuck as a Republican, although I'm watching many of the things that they're doing, and I find I detest a tremendous amount of the behaviors and the bills that they're passing, not doing anything about our southern border. And yet we live in a two-party system. So I feel as though, I mean, I actually want to win, so I can't be an independent or a libertarian. I need to
Hmm.
be over here with this group of people. But I believe that it is our job to perfect the Republican Party. I can't abandon it because we're a two-party system. So if
Right.
I got to be here, I believe it's my job to perfect it, to beat it into shape, because come this November, our nation is going to take a very decisive pivot, one direction or the other, with Donald Trump or Biden. And I believe if it's Biden, I believe it's game over for our nation. So much has been lost of who we are, of our identity, and how far we've gone with other nations. So I earnestly believe we must win. But I look at the Republican Party today. I see we have 6 months before November.
Hmm.
I talk to people all across Pennsylvania. There is no grassroots effort. There is no knocking of doors. I keep hearing about it. It's about to happen. We're about to pay people to come into the state and knock doors, but I don't see it. And I would think if anyone would see it, I would see it and I would know about it since I'm talking to people from all across the state. And yet everyone just feels real optimistic. And I don't understand what that optimism is rooted in.
I know what it's rooted in. It is rooted in it's rooted in this philosophy that what worked in 2016 will work again today.
Mm.
And that he's just going to magically pick up momentum. He doesn't. Matter of fact, I think the Iowa primaries is a perfect example. He didn't show up, he didn't have to do anything, and he ran away with it. And so that
Yes, he
builds
did.
complacency, you know? And so why does he need to do anything else other than what he always does? Just do another rally, people will show up, it'll create this so-called enthusiasm. Um, but that breeds complacency. It breeds laziness, political laziness. So the reason why I criticize Mar-a-Lago is that there's so much effort to throw parties, to throw rallies. But like you said, where's the effort to actually go into these places? Where's the effort to actually talk to these people? Usually, whether it was Republican or Democrat, years ago, you'd at least see the photo op of going into the diner and shaking people's hands. Where is that? And the only thing I've seen is him going. I think in Atlanta, and he went into the McDonald's.
Which was good.
I guess, yeah, but that's
That's
one.
good.
That's
Yeah.
one thing.
I mean,
Like,
well, one, we see Democrats have weaponized our legal system, our judicial system,
right.
and they are weaponizing it against him for now. I feel strongly that if we lose in November, they will turn that weaponization to the rest, to people like myself and others who
Hmm.
just won't shut up and go somewhere and sit down. but they will make us do so, right? And so that's one of the reasons why he can't be perhaps out doing as much as he would like to do. And yet, it's going to take more than just Donald Trump to get us
Yeah.
between here and November. And I'm speaking to those particular people and county chairs and state chairs, even at the national level. I keep hearing it's coming, but I don't see anything. I see a lot of arrogance. I see a lot of, we got this, we're going to do this, because we're looking at a snapshot in time of a rally that must translate to the ground. I'm so low to the grassroots. This is where I spend my time. I tend to feel the shifts before others at the higher level feel them. And and all I'm getting is crickets right now.
You know what and this is not just a Republican thing. I think it's all of politics thing. I think there is when you're in the political sphere, you're in the political sphere. And so you're disconnected from what regular people are going to do, and also what regular people even know is happening. Right. So, personally, I'm not like a massive fan of Trump. He might get my vote this November. He's likely to get my vote this November. But like, I didn't realize that he had a rally going on in my state. Right. So to me, that says only someone who is like really following him would even know that he was holding some sort of rally in Wildwood. I only found out about it after it happened. Right. So how many other people in New Jersey knew that was happening? How many other people in the bordering, New Jersey and Pennsylvania knew that it was happening? Then
you would have been 80,001. And do we really need that one? I don't know.
Right.
Yes, we do need that one, right? Because I think you hit on something very, very real. Clearly, there is, half the nation leans towards Donald Trump. That was very real, if not more than half in 2020. And I believe after living through 3 years of pure hell, 3.5 years of pure hell with Democrats and these college campuses and our children being chemically castrated and mutilated, I think a lot of people are waking up to the reality. But I don't believe that, to our point that we're making, that the strategy of the Republican Party should be, well, he's worse, or who else are you going to vote for? Who else are you going to? I think that those are the two prevailing strategies right now that I see out of candidates. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump. I believe he would perhaps do more if he wasn't forced to be in New York every single day for this sham of a persecution that they're committing against him. But to everyone below, from Donald Trump down, right? Down, from not Donald Trump, but from his level down, I sense this strategy that is rooted in arrogance of, well, we're not them, without giving us something that they're for. They just talk about what they're against. But then secondly, we don't need to go talk to these grassroots people because who else are they going to vote for? I'm the only one on the list. So you're either going to vote for me or you're a Democrat, right? And I don't believe that, although that may have worked in the past, I don't think they're fully appreciating the apathy, the sheer apathy that has set in within our own base.
That is exactly right. It's like the Republican strategy is to win when the Democrats lose. It's not to win.
Wow.
And I see that often too. Like, obviously, like, Twitter isn't, just like we talk about the rallies aren't everything. Twitter isn't everything, but sometimes it gives a glimpse into the most political people, whether they be politicians, influencers, or just regular people who are interested in politics. And I see that kind of mentality, like, Joe Biden is so bad, they have to vote for us. And I think that only goes so far sometimes. I mean, even if that's true, that shouldn't be the only reason.
It is certainly true for me. Now I'm
Hmm.
going to vote Republican anyway. I would never vote Democrat again. And like you, I used to be a Democrat, but
Hmm.
my turning point started when I was a junior in college. I was taking finance classes, working with a buy side broker or sell side broker. And so I'm understanding how money works and I'm paying attention to policies, and it just wasn't adding up. The math
Right.
wasn't mathing, as my children would say. It wasn't making sense to me. And that began a pivot in my own life. So I would never vote Democrat again. But surely, for those who saw what Donald Trump did to me and kneecapping my race in 2022, I have no loyalty to anyone from that perspective, and yet I'm voting Donald Trump because Biden sucks, because
Right.
Democrats are horrible, because these people are a bunch of communists. So that is certainly true for me. Like, well, who else you gonna vote for, Kathy? You're right. I'm absolutely going to walk in there and pull the lever for Republicans all the way down the line, because Democrats are behaving like a bunch of communists. Not all of them, but collectively they move in a pack. And the direction in which they're moving, I am vehemently opposed to. But you're right. That does not translate to everyone. Everyone is not just going to
Right.
hold their nose. Everyone is not just going to go in and pull that lever down.
That's absolutely it. And one thing I also realize when it comes to politics is people focus on what they focus on. So, for example, the reason why you would never vote Democrat may not be the reason that somebody else would never vote Democrat. And it also may not be the reason, like your position may not be the reason on the other side as to why someone votes Democrat.
Right.
So, to give an example, for me, I am wholly pro life. But someone may be voting Democrat not because of abortion, they don't care about abortion,
Mm-hmm.
but they care about something else, whatever
Right.
that thing may be.
Right.
And it's about finding out what is that thing that they're actually, and why they're supporting it. So the reason I bring that up is because someone may vote Democrat for a very particular reason, and the communist stuff or the things that are happening on campuses is noise to them.
You're
They don't
right.
care about that.
You're right.
They care about this one thing, whatever it might be, and that's why they're choosing it. And so while you and I we're in the political bubble and we pay attention to what's going on a nearly daily basis, for someone who works long hours, comes home, has responsibility, they turn on the TV for an hour to get some sort of update as to what might be going on. And they might even do that a couple times a week, not every day. And for them, they already have the reason why they support who they support. And as long as nothing is interrupting that reason, then they're going to keep doing what they're doing. We're also kind of banking on is the love for Joe Biden the reason why someone's voting for Joe Biden, or is the hatred for Trump the reason why someone's voting for Joe Biden? And I think there is something about, um, I don't want to say that it's necessarily all Trump's fault, but Trump is seen as a divisive character. And
And I don't believe it's his fault. I agree with you. That was one of the reasons why I was the very first person Vivek brought onto his team. And that's the
mhm,
reason why I was a part of his team, is because I don't think it's Donald Trump's fault completely, not even halfway. But you're right. You mentioned the name Trump and you will elicit a response from people.
right,
People will have a very definite, there's very few middle of the road people with Donald Trump. It's either one way or the other, but very few people are lukewarm on him. And I thought then that was going to be a problem for us now. The people have chosen. I did my part to bring
mhm,
a different voice to the table, to the forefront. And I think we did a great job with making sure Vivek has that spotlight on him and he can continue to speak truth that I believe we need today. But the people spoke and the people wanted Trump. And so I am going to align myself with that. And we're going to
right.
all move in the same direction. But that is a concern.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think about that often. You know, I still go back to the famous saying, "It's the economy, stupid." Like the economy is everything. I met so many people prior to COVID that were like shocked that the economy was doing great, and they were like, "Man, I didn't really care for him, but I'll keep voting for Trump. If the economy is going to look like this, I'll vote for Trump." People, they'll ignore the mean tweets, they'll ignore anything as long as the economy is doing well.
Very
And
true.
so the avenue to possibly get people to say, you know what, F the mean tweets and all this other stuff, I'm going to vote not for Biden. I'm going to vote for Trump because inflation is terrible. And when Trump was in office, things were relatively good prior to COVID. Um, and so I think it becomes a game of which one is going to push people further. Um, or is it going to make them stay where they're at? And I think that by not having a whole lot of people who are kind of take them or leave them kind of attitude, it makes it really for a tough guess as to who's going to win this election. There are a lot of people who like, let's say for DeSantis, they don't have a strong view on DeSantis or anything. Some people do, some people don't, but there are a lot of people who are just like, yeah, you know, I heard he's
Yeah.
doing some things down there. I'm not really sure. I was like, that's actually works in someone's benefit, that they
Yeah.
don't always have such strong feelings. But with Trump, it is either you
Very
like
strong.
him or you hate him.
Very few people in the middle. You're right.
Yeah, very, very few people in the middle.
You
Very
know,
few people just see him as a man who's flawed. And that's how I see him.
two two more things I want to talk to you
Yeah.
about before I let you go. One of them is that I do believe that there are wars that can be won by air, fire alone, by sending in drones, and you don't
Hmm.
have to put any boots on the ground. I believe that those situations exist, but I believe that there are other times when you have to put boots on the ground, where you have to engage in hand to hand, man on man combat. And I believe that this is the situation in which we're living in. I believe a lot of what is being done, and not even at a very effective pace, is a lot of air engagement, engaging the base, engaging voters with just providing air cover.
Hmm.
I believe it has to be both. I believe it has to be a top down and a grassroots up strategy, where you're actually have boots on the ground, engaging in hand-to-hand combat with people,
Yeah.
having conversations, engaging people's mind. Now we're in the culture where you can't even where everything is taken literal when it doesn't fit their narrative. So clearly I'm not talking about literal hand-to-hand combat, but more figuratively, of engaging people's mind and forcing them to explain why they believe what they think they believe, right?
Yeah.
And I don't see a very effective job of coming from the top down, but at least I see some of that. But I really don't see from the grassroots up this kind of intentional engagement to figure out, to your point, what did you say? You said we have to interrupt their reasons for why they're voting Democrat. But in order for me to interrupt their reasons, I have to be engaging them
Right.
at that more intimate level, to find out why are these people doing what they're doing, and let's start engaging with them. I don't see that kind of intentionality.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with anything that you just said. I will add that I'm worried. I'm worried that. All right. So I'll say this as someone who's an independent. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm open to voting Republican though. But I think it is in the best interest of the entire nation to have two parties who are fighting for every American's vote. And I think as long as we have that, we have a relatively healthy political system. And what I see is two parties who are comfortable with where they are and who aren't necessarily trying to get everybody's vote. And that's the part that concerns me.
Mm.
Part of the reason why I left the left is because the left was leaving me. I was comfortable with a relatively liberal Democrat. And I didn't necessarily have to agree with everything that they thought, but I was relatively comfortable with a liberal Democrat. And then what I started seeing were liberal Democrats started moving further left, started placating to bad ideas, started saying stuff that was really off the wall, and then obviously becoming illiberal. And by doing that and alienating the moderates, well, Trump picked up a lot of moderates who liked sort of liberal things. And Trump isn't this wholly conservative
Right.
voice. He's more of a populist figure. So, he was able to pick up people like me, but obviously not everybody. So I think we need to have a stronger political system. It's very easy to say and very hard to do, but I think we need both parties fighting for every American's vote. And that entails going into as many places as you possibly can and figuring out what they want. What do you want? I've talked to Republicans who are like, how do we get more black voters? I'm like, go to where they live. And
They're
because
not
that's
interested in that.
well, then don't say that, well, they'll never vote for us. Because I've written about this, how many Republicans have this underdog syndrome where they expect to lose and are surprised to win. They don't have a strategy and they always expect to lose.
I
So I'm
call it
just
the martyr. It's
the
like
martyr.
I do, because I saw it. Like
Yeah.
when Republicans tend to be very comfortable being the martyr. You
Mm,
call it the underdog, being like, oh, poor is me, and look at my plight.
yeah.
Look at all that's wrong. Like, we're really comfortable, myself included. I'm real comfortable telling you all the ways Democrats suck. I can do a whole list from
Right.
1 to 100, right? But being out here on the road and actually, living among the grassroots, you realize that's just not enough. People are riddled with anxiety. There's so much apathy, but that apathy, the root of that is hopelessness. People
Yeah.
feel despair right now, and they're very fearful, and it's that sense of paralysis that is setting in with people. Before you go, I want to go
Mhm.
back to something you said earlier about the condescension of Democrats. And yes, Democrats are very condescending. We can talk about, Kathy Hochul and, what she said. Black people don't even know what the word her computer is, or Biden telling us in our face, if you don't vote for me, then you're not black. Like, what? But we see it on the right as well.
Mhm.
And I believe the ones on the right, it's as if they are adopting. We're very comfortable with seeing the left play victim and, really stoke victimhood and all of that, and, oppress and oppressor. But in the past 3 years, I've seen more and more conservative Republicans adopting that language and that tactic as well. And, just recently talking about Vivek, I'm mentioning his name a lot right now. I'm giving you a lot of plugs, not that you need it, but he just did an interview with Ann Coulter. She is on the right now,
Mhm.
whether you think she's far right or not, she is a part of the right, and her voice resonates with a number of people on the right. And I can, just look at, I've been throwing out Charlie Kirk's name quite a bit. I'm seeing some, alarming kind of rhetoric coming out of him. This would be more of the mainstream conservative. So whether you're talking about far right with Ann Coulter or someone like Charlie Kirk, more of mainstream
Mhm.
conservatism, but Ann Coulter telling Vivek, hey, I agree with everything you have to say. I agree with you more than I agree with those other white people on that stage, but I would never vote for you because you're an Indian and you're
Right.
not WASP, as she called them, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So therefore, I would never vote for you because of the color of your skin and because you're not one of us, right? Like, how much more blatant can it get? So, and that may, and I'm not opposed to people having those opinions. I just find it curious that we're having a lot of those kind of discussions 6 months before a very important election. I'm like, can we not have this conversation the day after November's election? Why do we have to have that conversation now? You know, there's the whole, what is it, the great replacement. I mean, it's a lot of useless conversations, detrimental conversation, I believe would be harmful, conversation I believe that would be weaponized to put that spotlight. Look, a bunch of racists, these Republicans, whether it is or isn't, I don't care. We can't pretend we don't know how our words are going to be weaponized against us. Speak to that as well on the right. We're used to the left being a bunch of racists. I find these liberals and progressives to be some of the most racist people I've ever come across. And I grew up in the deep South of Alabama. But I am listening to, over the past 3 years, white conservatives become more and more emboldened about saying things that I find to be borderline concerning or just flat out racist, like Ann Coulter.
So, quick question: am I cursing or no cursing? I don't know how you.
I don't curse, but what are you going to say?
So what I was going to say, I was going to give a quick example as far as condescending things on the right. I would see, on Twitter, for example, and these are coming from big name influencers, I would stand back and watch the black propaganda, right, of thugs, black thugs committing crimes. Now, does that mean that they're making up that someone's committing crime? Of course not. But I see that there is this need to constantly show it. And then over a period of time, there are the subtle comments. There is the see the pattern, these phrases. And I'm like, okay, this is not by accident. And then on top of that, what I would see, and this is extremely propagandistic, when there is no new crime, they bring back an old video from 4 years ago of a crime featuring black people committing. And I said, that's very interesting. Why did they have to reach back to the archives to pull out some black people committing crime? Because they couldn't find anything. And so they just keep drudging this up. And then you go through the comments and you see this general animosity that is building up. And I'm like, they're doing this purposefully. There are some major accounts who are doing this over and over. Now, you take that, right? And then you take when Donald Trump gets his mugshot. And I saw so many people, some people I respected, until they said, his mugshot makes him relatable to black people.
Or what about the gold high top tennis shoes? Oh yeah, black people really gotta come out and vote for him now because these gold high top tennis shoes, which may be true. I don't know. It's not true for me, right? But it's like, right. Is no one catching this?
But see, here's the crazy part. I've been wanting to write an article about this for a long time, but I don't know who would even publish this. But all right, so if we were to talk about the mugshot, from there, then they started taking these videos from rappers, right? Who are like, man, I'll vote for Trump. And I thought it was very funny for two reasons. They're showing the same rappers that they would call degenerates any day of the week, who are perpetuating terrible black culture and all this stuff.
Right.
But they said they're voting for Trump. And now they're going to see, even these guys are voting for Trump. Look, oh yeah, I like him now. And I thought that was very interesting. But the article I wanted to write was that the political right doesn't understand niggas. Like, they can't tell the difference between black people and niggas. And niggas aren't known for voting. Like, it's a very crude thing. It's kind of based off of what Chris Rock said in his comedy special. But these people who are breaking into stores and doing all this other stuff, these are niggas, right? And they don't represent most black people.
I hate that word.
That's why I say, like, it's a crude thing to say.
It is. I hate that word. I understand what you're implying. And,
right.
And I have said the same thing. You want to focus on working class black people.
Right.
Those are the people, because those are the ones who are trying to whose way of life is not based on subsidies from the government. These are people who are trying to build a better life. They want to be like George and Wheezy. They want to keep
Right.
moving on up. They want
Exactly.
nice things. They want good schools for their children. And we have, if we can get our head out of the sand and actually represent the base. When I talk about we, I'm talking about the base, not the top 1/3. I don't know what they're doing.
Hmm.
But we, as the base of people, we have what they want. And we should be spending all of our time and effort and energy reaching out to them, because I think they're ready. I think
I
they're
think so
open.
too.
I think they're open. I don't know if they're ready, but I think they can get ready if we would show even a modicum amount of interest and going to them and reaching out to them. Maybe not physically going out if you don't feel safe. I mean, I certainly don't feel safe going into certain predominantly Black communities. So, I mean, I put that on out there because that is
Hmm.
true. But, but there are the number of ways to, with geofencing, with, direct mail, email, phone call. There's a number of ways of reaching out to a particular segment if we really had an interest in
Yeah,
connecting.
I completely agree with you. I think that I'm right there with you as far as people are open, and one of the reasons why I say people are open, because I'm hearing a lot more people have something negative to say about Democrats
Yeah.
than they would have said before, and I think that means something. Now, it doesn't automatically mean that you win their vote. It could just mean that they're like, well, the Republicans are still racist, so I'm going to sit at home because it doesn't even matter.
Yeah.
That's what I'm more so worried about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
And,
that.
and I think so. And I
Mhm.
think that's true also in our own base. I think that is true for Democrats who will be open to vote for Republican, but I think it's also true. I saw it in Iowa with Vivek, and
Mhm.
that really was eye-opening to see the real numbers with names and phone numbers and addresses of people that they had identified as apathetic, like they're not moving. And that
Mhm.
number was as large as the number of people we had identified were going to vote for Vivek. That was very alarming to me, because everything in this culture, whether it's the open borders, whether it is little boys being lied to and told they can be little girls, or little girls having their breasts removed, little boys being chemically cast, those things are so alarming to me. That,
Yeah.
Democrats want to have abortion up to the point of birth, where now wars, rumors of wars. My 18-year-old is now at the age where he must sign up to be maybe forced to go fight a war that, I mean, like, who's benefiting from that? So there are a number of things that says to me, we must win. And I am not a Democrat. I do not want them to win, but I am not going to just pick up a pair of pom-poms, go rah rah, sit down and shut up and comply. We must win. And
Right.
that's the reason why I think these conversations, although it's 6 months, these conversations are very important. I'm not about the Photoshop or the photo ops of being at Mar-a-Lago, look who's here, being at big rallies, because I've seen that. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt from 2020, and we did not win. What are
Mhm.
we doing on the ground to fill these precinct captain seats, committee people seats, to make sure we have enough people manning these polls, watching these ballots being counted? The laws, are we spending enough time and energy in court, rolling back some of these mail-in ballots regulations that allow it to be a free-for-all? These are the conversations I think we need to be having. I'm not sensing it. I am prayerful and hopeful, fingers crossed, that we're just doing it. But I don't think we should have to just cross our fingers and hope to God that we're doing what is necessary.
Yeah. And one thing I want to add is, um, speaking of like voter apathy, I think there are Republicans who are kind of apathetic as well as going into these different areas, especially in the cities. And I don't think they realize like how many people don't vote within these cities. And part of the reason they don't vote is because it kind of doesn't matter. There's only one party that's fighting for their vote, and outside of making sure that the communist doesn't win, which if you even know that this person is a communist because you're too busy and all you see is a D next to their name, um, then they're not going to vote. They just sit at home. And so that's why voter turnout for registered voters, not even all citizens who are eligible to vote, but for registered voters all over the country in major cities, like I think Chicago was less than 20%
Yeah.
of voter turnout. New York, I think, is less than 20%.
Here in Pennsylvania, I think it was like maybe 23, 27%. I mean,
Yeah,
it was abysmal. And
yeah,
yes, some will say, oh, that's just because, Donald Trump is already, there's no one running against Donald Trump at this point. I saw the same thing in New Hampshire. I saw the same thing in Iowa. There is something there. And I don't believe I believe our party suffering from a tremendous amount of arrogance. Rooted in
yeah.
what? I don't know. I mean, arrogance if you actually win, but we become a party of losers. So I don't understand why there's that high degree of arrogance or confidence, whatever you want to say.
I think it's complacency. I mean, I'm not trying to be ageist, but I've been to Republican events, and the age tends to be older. Um, and I get it. Like you've been part of the Republican Party for X amount of years, you've done the same thing for X amount of years.
Mm.
So why would you do something different? Um, Whereas I think the benefit that Democrats have is that they tend to be younger. They're like I'll give you a perfect example. When Trump was really pushing forward, 2016 and after, the people I saw mobilizing the most and trying to do groundwork, whether they're successful or not, were actually former Democrats. And like we'll use Brenda Straka, former Democrat, created an organization, was trying to do some sort of groundwork. And I started seeing like all these different events, all these different, whether it be rallying points, uh, they were trying to do something. They were trying to reach
And they probably
people.
got kneecapped by the older Republican group, but I get your point.
Yeah, probably. But I thought that was very interesting. That was the thing that I noticed. It was very
Mm.
interesting. You know, they're like, we get it. Like we woke up. It's almost like being born again. You know, where
Yeah.
you really want to show people like I just discovered this, and they work really hard to try and bring people in. And then there are the people who've always been this way, and they don't have the same motivation. They don't have the same enthusiasm to do that. They almost are to the effect that one, they don't need to sell people on anything, and two, if you don't vote for us, well, you're just an idiot anyways, right? And I think there's a lot of complacency and a little bit of arrogance that's mixed into it. And what makes it worse is that it's not just the Republican who lives next door. This is people who are in state committees and so on and so forth. And honestly, I think Trump's existence has made them even lazier because, well, what does Trump do? Is he doing
He
this? All
does,
right.
yeah, yeah. He does all the work, and we just gotta
Yeah,
show up. Yes, yes,
exactly.
and I am guilty of that. I think back to 2016. We won. 2018, we didn't win the House, but that's okay. Trump's still in office. And I
Hmm.
look back, I didn't really start getting engaged at a great degree until 2020. But I look back over those 4 years, and I certainly could have done so much more. I didn't know. I mean, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know. And so I try not to beat myself up a whole lot of not getting engaged sooner. But that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes when I realize that Kathy, could have done a whole lot more. But you're right. I mean, Trump's in office, we won, whatever. They're snowflakes, gotcha memes, look at them. They're ridiculous, howling at the moon, right? And you poke and you make fun, and then you just move on about your own life.
Right.
But those snowflakes grew up and went and got jobs at our children's schools. And now they are teaching them, literally, it's just evil, what is being done within our schools, right? And I think about that, like, I should have been running for school board or something and just not engaged. Now I am engaged. Now I am awake. And it seems really hard, even harder. It seems overwhelming. And yet, I believe our country is worth the fight. And I say often, if our country is going to go down, it won't go down with me sitting on the couch scrolling through Facebook. I am going to be out here doing my part with the little that we have and hopefully addressing one of the issues you and I have talked about. And
Yeah.
that is the source of people's information. You have a podcast as well, right?
Yeah.
Called
Breaking bread. Sit down, have conversations with people over a meal.
Yes, I saw that. How did you get hooked up with Jennifer Say? Now you are a model for her new clothing brand. Like, how did that happen?
Actually, it was initially a joke on Twitter because she was kind of teasing that she had this brand, although she didn't really announce it. And she was like, "Should I create a brand that is for this?" And I say, "Hey, if you need a model, let me know." And she sent me a DM. She's like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "I'm serious if you're serious." 2 days
I
later, she sends
know.
me a contract.
I love it. Now, speaking of Twitter, why do you have me blocked?
Do I have you blocked?
Yes, you have me blocked, Adam.
I don't remember. I don't
Yes,
remember.
you do. I went out there because I'm about to interview you, and I'm talking to Trisha. You know Trisha, and she sends me a link to your page, and I'm like, I'm blocked.
I
So
don't honestly.
please
I don't even
strongly
remember. I'll
consider
unblock you.
unblocking me.
Yes,
But
I'll
do you
unblock you
do
because I don't
that
even
in
remember.
general because you just don't want so you're not really using your Twitter page like most of us to just grow our Twitter feed and or our followers and use that as a point of inflection in the culture. You don't use your Twitter page for that.
I use it. I use it to say stuff, but I often don't comment on stuff. If that makes sense. I've been, especially the past year, I've been writing for different publications or creating stuff off the website, and so I'll use it to promote that more so than being highly involved in Twitter. But I do apologize. I don't even
Smart,
remember. I don't even
smart,
remember
smart
like
move.
doing that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I was like, wow, did I say something? Which is very possible because I am just so over a lot of things. So
And you
I
know what? I was in support of you when you were running for
thank you.
office in the Senate. So like I don't
Okay.
even honestly I
It's
don't
a
even
mistake
remember.
then. It's a mistake
Yeah,
then. Unblock me though. So
yeah.
that
I'll do it
I
right
can
after
at least
this.
see what it is you're talking about because I truly appreciate what it is. I appreciate your voice. I appreciate the clarity, just kind of piercing through. I was rewatching your interview with Vivek, and it's so true what he said is that whether we agree or disagree on things, the fact that your authenticity shines through. And I
Yeah,
certainly appreciate that. So thank you so much for spending some time with me.
yeah, yeah. My pleasure, and thank you for inviting me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay right there. To everyone else, you've been listening to Adam Cole. Adam, what do you do?
I am a writer. I'm the founder of Wrong Speak Publishing. Um, I'm an author of the book Black Victim, Black Victor, and
A really good book. A really good book.
thank you. Um, yeah, I'm just a regular guy who's just trying to express himself.
And you have a new article. I read it this morning out at Post talking about Kathy Hochul, the governor of. Am I pronouncing her last name correct? Kathy Hochul.
Hochul,
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 yeah.
Hochul. Yeah.
The governor of. Look, oh, there you go. Black people can't read, but I'm not really looking at it right now, and I can read. Thank you very much, Adam. I appreciate you taking some time out to talk with us.
Thank you.